Um, yes, so the recording is in progress, and our guest speaker tonight is Makayla Oliver, who is the Community Relations Manager for the City of Bend. And I am Kathy Roach, and I am the acting, let's say, chair for BANA, as in I volunteered to grab everything as Cindy ran out the door, and we haven't had elections to put people into specific roles yet since that happened. So, and I see one chat message down here. Oh, Ashley just says sorry. Okay, so I think we're ready to go, and I'm going to hand this over to Makayla then, if all goes well, and we're going to make her the host here so she can use her PowerPoint.
I am the host now. I feel like I've got all the power. So, hi everyone. I'm Makayla Oliver, Community Relations Manager. My focus is with the neighborhood associations and the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. It also is for community partners, but this week we're going into our final round of interviews for a new person who's also a community relations manager who will take on that community partners role so that I can spend more time with helping neighborhood associations and the NLA. So with that, I know Councillor Campbell is here, and she was here when I was not. This is impromptu, but I've asked her just to share what she remembers about when the neighborhood associations, but also when the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance was formed. So Councillor Campbell, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Madam Oliver, with all of the power now. That's excellent. And thank you, everybody. I am afraid I've got to be someplace else at 6:30, but was happy to be able to zoom in for a few minutes here. That question about the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance and just the neighborhood associations in general is, in fact, the hot topic right now, one of them. So when I first came on to council, if my memory serves, that was one of the very first years when neighborhood associations got any financial support from the city, which would have been back, I think, 2014, 2015. Before that time, the neighborhood associations really had not been formed specifically to have anything to do with the city of Bend. So, for example, in those early days, my own neighborhood association is the Orchard District, and a lot of the work that they were doing had to do with the fact that Pilot Butte State Park is in the middle of our neighborhood. And so they were working on issues like the trails and weed control, frankly, on Pilot Butte State Park and other places in our neighborhood. And then as we got to have more neighborhoods becoming active and we wanted to encourage that system, we did put some money up for the neighborhood associations. And that amount has increased by a little bit over time. But when that first happened, and the way it's happening right now has always been problematic because of the makeup and in particular the size of the neighborhood associations. So as you all probably know, Mountain View Neighborhood Association, for example, I think is the very biggest one. I think they have thousands of tax lots of doors they're trying to reach. Makayla's letting me know it's even more than that. It's lots of thousands, right? And then the smallest one is one of those right downtown. It's the Old Bend Neighborhood Association. That one doesn't even have 1,000. They're, I think, somewhere near 800 or 900. But every neighborhood association gets the same amount of money from us. So the Old Bend neighborhood is able to stretch their few $1,000s much further than the Mountain View neighborhood, for example. So that has been a problem that's been kind of lingering really forever, as long as the neighborhood associations have been around. And those problems are exacerbating and changing this very moment because of the UGB expansion. So because of the UGB expansion, we flat out have new properties and new homes, and we've got to figure out which neighborhoods those are going to go to. So you all probably know very well this affects you. Some of the new lands are where they might be Boyd Acres Neighborhood Association. Some of the land logically will be in the Mountain View, and some is the Southern Crossing neighborhood. They've already annexed the COID property in anticipation. They've annexed it into their neighborhood association in anticipation, knowing that a developer is in fact looking at that property for homes. So as far as I'm concerned, right now is the time to correct those historical imbalances while we are figuring out what are we going to do with this extra 2,000 acres of new homes? Where are they going to be included? And then the other thing I will mention is the problem of renters. The other thing, and this has to do with very little money we're giving you all to try and reach everyone in your neighborhood. I think traditionally, most, if not all, the neighborhood associations have been sending things like an invitation to a meeting to the tax lots. And if it's a giant apartment building, there might only be one tax lot. And I see Makayla is giving me a small nod, like I might be kind of correct about that. One reason I know about that problem is because I have to campaign, and I would very much like to send campaign materials to people who live in apartments. And I know how difficult that is to do, to actually figure it out. So for me, for example, personally, I searched the rolls and found everyone that has like a unit number or an apartment number, and was able to send, again, campaign materials that way. But it does not get all of the folks we are trying to reach. So as far as I'm concerned, those are kind of, so we have some long-standing historical equity type problems having to do with the neighborhood associations. So we want to fix those, as well as trying to decide, what are we going to do with thousands and thousands of new homes? How are we going to redraw the neighborhood associations so that it's more equitable for everyone? One, because we believe in equity and inclusion, and two, because it's just not right. It is unethical. It's illegal for us to be supporting with tax dollars any kind of system that has inequities built into it. So I'm so happy. Makayla is just the right person to be here and to be able to talk to you about all of those things. And I will be available at a future date. I'm looking forward to your meeting in October when you have Stacy Whitty as your guest. That will be tremendous. Stacy is working on our crisis of homelessness, and Stacy is just such a tremendous activist in our community. So I absolutely will be there for that meeting, and I'm always available if you want me to speak on any topic or just answer questions about anything for you all. So as far as I'm concerned, I still do have a couple of minutes if anybody has any question they'd like to ask me. And then otherwise, I'll just turn it right on over to Makayla. I don't see any real or virtual hands up. So I will take this moment to log off and get dressed to go to my other event.
Thank you.
And thank you all. Thank
Yeah.
you always for the work that you're doing. It's just so, and the reason these things have happened is because I do very much believe in the neighborhood associations and believe in the public's ability to reach out to, especially their elected officials, their governments, their state parks. Yes, citizens should be able to know who's in charge of this. If it's a state park issue, the neighborhoods can help with that. And I think that's just great. So thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening. Thank you, Makayla. I appreciate your work. Thanks for doing this. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Counselor.
Of course.
All right. So hello, everyone. I see I let Cindy in since I have this host
thank
power
you.
now.
Yeah.
So Cindy has joined us. I think before we get started, I'd really like to know who's in the room. So we have Kathy, who I know is the chair. I work with you on the NLA. Tom, are you still doing business manager, if that's what you guys call it on your board?
Business outreach,
Yes.
yes, he is. I see he's on mute at the moment.
Yeah, I am.
Great. And then we have Steve and Ashley, 2 new board members, and you haven't done elections or anything yet. So
we
right
haven't
now you're
assigned
sitting on.
people to specific roles yet.
Okay. And then was there someone who wasn't able to make it tonight or more folks on?
Erica Speck
Okay.
is on vacation all this month, but she is also one of our new board members. And I see that Chris Rankin has not joined us. He's another one of our new board members.
Okay. That's great. I'm glad to hear that you guys have so many new folks, and I'm happy to be here.
Jill
hey,
is
Jill.
North Point president.
Yes. Okay. So Jill is here with North Point neighborhood. Great. Well, I guess let's start with how I fit into this whole picture. Because sometimes people are confused about what exactly my role is in supporting the neighborhood associations. And so as your community relations manager, I really operate as the navigator of City Hall. So anytime that you as neighborhood leaders are looking for topics to speak on or topics that you want spoken on and you need a presenter, I can help you and find those people within the city. If you are looking for more information about everything that's going on, I try to condense down all of the many emails and informational blasts that the city turns out and pick which ones are really neighborhood specific so that you get one email with things that your neighbors might care about. And I try to do that weekly, but it usually depends on how many updates are coming in. So with neighborhood associations, you are independent organizations of the city. And so as a staff person, my real role is to support you in ways that I can by sharing resources, help you navigate City Hall, like I said, and coming to these, helping you brainstorm for ways to do community building and get you the tools that you need to succeed. So today we'll talk about some of those. The other portion of my work is with the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. So we'll talk about them here in a second too, but they are an advisory committee to council. And one person from each of our 13 neighborhood associations sits on that committee. And it really works as a conduit, one for the city to provide the neighborhoods with information about developments and happenings in your areas, but also for the neighborhood and community members to bring issues that are happening in your neighborhoods up to city council if they happen to be a citywide issue. So really that is where I spend most of my time, is in agenda setting and checking policy, making sure that we know what's coming before our counselors so that if the neighborhoods have an opinion on it, we are able to get in front of that. So I started in September of 2019. So I was in the office for about 4 months before we all got sent home, and I've been operating virtually since then. So I did get to meet Kathy before we got shut down, if you will. And then from March of 2020 to now, we've really been operating virtually as far as the advisory committee goes. So really looking forward to a return to normalcy, but definitely want to do it when it's safe for everyone, and when people feel comfortable. So I heard Councillor Campbell mentioning that you have a general meeting next month. Is that going to be your annual meeting? I know sometimes you call your monthly meetings general meetings, if I remember right.
We call our annual meeting the one that we had the picnic that you attended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's where we're supposed to vote on new officers and stuff, but we didn't this year because it was just we just had people signing up to be board members, and we hadn't yet interviewed them and accepted them. So we tend to do 1 month of board meeting and then 1 month of board and general meeting combined. We have a general speaker, then I try to get it out to a wider audience to listen to. So I can see that my efforts to get this one out though to a wider audience didn't produce a lot. Jill's here though. So, but yeah, Eric arranged for Stacy Witt to speak to us. And I think Stacy's going to be the one speaker at the October meeting. I still want to get Joette to talk to us about the NART so that we can contrast a little bit the NART versus the neighborhood associations, and so that everybody's clear and they don't get the two mixed up, I guess is what I'd say.
Okay.
So we'll get that in somewhere. We usually don't have a meeting in December because so many people are gone. We might not have a meeting in November also, just because that's another month when a lot of people are gone towards the end of it. So you're really trying to cram it in early.
Yeah.
And then usually January or February, we get back into the regular alternating months routine. And depending upon who volunteers for what and who's in what positions, we can vary that. But that's what it's been in the past.
Okay. Thanks for that background. So I want to
much
make sure.
More than our one required meeting a year.
Yes, you do. And I think it's great. It keeps people informed. So can you see my slides? I just want to make sure.
Yes, I can see your slides.
Great. So I like to start out with really the basics. This slide I like to call alphabet soup. There's a lot of acronyms when you work in city government, and we try to make them more easily understandable as we can, but it comes with the amount of projects and programs that are being operated. So one of the big frequently asked questions that we get is, how do neighborhood associations differ from homeowners associations? A lot of folks think that a neighborhood association is a homeowners association, so we get a lot of confusion with that. The way that I like to describe it is that neighborhood associations operate more like districts. So on the smallest scale, you have a homeowners association, which typically is a small area, a subdivision, so a few blocks, if you will, that have certain CC&Rs. They look at design and aesthetics. They are focused on neighborhood amenities. And usually HOAs are funded by the homeowners who live within that homeowners association, so that it's done through dues. Now, homeowners associations are not recognized in city code, and that is one of the biggest differences between them and neighborhood associations. Neighborhood associations, as I said, operate more like districts. We have 13 in the city of Bend. We have both businesses and homeowners represented within a neighborhood association. So what that means is, according to the city of Bend's code, which does recognize neighborhood associations, there can be anybody who owns or lives or works within an area of a neighborhood association. They can sign up to be a part of that neighborhood association. And so that includes business owners, and it includes homeowners, and it includes renters. If you reside in that area, then that is your neighborhood association. And the reason that that's important is because your neighborhood association is what is, I guess, the collective voices of your area. And they are communicating with the city on several topics. So Councilor Campbell alluded to this a little bit earlier, but the neighborhood associations have gone through quite the road to get to where they are today. Early 2000s is when the first neighborhoods were, I guess, established, the Southwest Bend neighborhood being the first out of all of them. With that, there came more and more. And so here we are at 13, with Summit West being the newest of all of those. And Summit West is kind of over, sorry, wrong screen, over here to the west side of Bend. And so as the city grew, the neighborhood associations kind of just grew with the boundaries. So as areas were annexed in, they organically morphed to the areas that they felt fit best, landing to the map that you see in front of you today. So over time, in the 2008 recession, before 2008 recession, the neighborhoods were written into the city code as an actual community partner that was helping us deliver land use news to their community members. They really functioned as a leg of the city. In the 2008 recession, we had a lot of budget cuts, and neighborhood associations were a part of that. So neighborhoods actually went back and became independent organizations, and the city said, we recognize your value, and so we don't want to cut off funding. We'll still fund you. We just can't have an office that manages you. And so that was how it stuck for a while. And for a while there, we lost neighborhoods. They weren't active, and they had to build back up to where we're at today. So in the last couple of years, the neighborhoods have really grown. I think we've seen more members, more active neighborhood associations than we ever had before. And that's really exciting. So how are they funded? They're funded by tax dollars. It is a communications grant, which I'll talk about in a bit. And each neighborhood gets them. I will say the one item that Councilor Campbell had wrong was that with the neighborhood association budget, we go based on tax lot. So Mountain View does have like 11,000 plus tax lots. They get $1 per tax lot, in the same way that Old Bend gets $1 per tax lot, but Old Bend only has like 800 tax lots. So it is kind of on a sliding scale to make it more fair, because we realize you got to send more mail to more people when you have a bigger neighborhood association. So with that, do you guys have questions? Please feel free to raise your hands, jump in. It's really informal, and I don't want to keep you waiting until the end. Okay. And then the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance, that is one representative of each of these districts, as I mentioned before. The Neighborhood Leadership Alliance is also written into code, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Maybe if my slides will move. So again, here's the 13 neighborhoods. I went in and just wanted to blow them up for you, but also show you all of the logos that they have. One of the benefits of you being independent is that you get to create your own brand. And I think that's really important, because each neighborhood is so different, and it really should be. Yeah. So the neighborhood associations are built to maintain and improve the quality of life in the city, but also to give community members a way to talk to their city government. In the state of Oregon, community participation is hailed as the #1 statewide planning rule. And so that's unique about Oregon, in a sense, where we really rely on a lot of community input to make the plans and processes that we move forward with. So if Empire Corridor, I think, is a good example, there was a lot of neighborhood meetings throughout that process. There was a lot of input measures with the transportation system plan. We had a lot of workshops with community members, a lot of surveys. We really do take the information that we get from those mediums and put them into our planning efforts. So I like to say, even though neighborhood associations were created to kind of be this conduit of government business and land use decisions, there's so much more than that. So we see the community building aspects and how awesome it is when you're able to have an event in the park and get all of your neighbors out and really connect over things that are more than politics. And that's why we see really the most successful neighborhood associations is land use, and these important topics are a piece of why you're formed, but not at the heart of it is the community members that you're serving. One of the things that I think is really important about neighborhood associations is that we're representative of who is in our community. There's, it's hard right now to get volunteers. It's hard to keep volunteers, especially with the pandemic that added a new layer of frustration. And it's hard to survey people when you're not meeting in person and you're not really having your finger on the pulse of what your neighborhood is feeling. And so there's different ways that we can do that. And we have a toolkit that can help you with that. So we'll get to that again. I wanted to highlight a few of the neighborhood association initiatives that are not government related, really. Neighborhood Street Safety Program is one of the programs that kicked off in the last couple of years, where there was a pot of funding that council gave us and said, you as community members, tell us where you want us to spend our money in improving your residential streets. And that was a really cool project that got people from all over the city to submit projects within their neighborhoods that they felt needed improvement. So crosswalks, stop signs, speed humps, extra lighting. There was all kinds of projects that were submitted, and the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance really was able to take all of those from the different neighborhood associations and help distill it down to the priority projects that we ended up spending our money on. So we're about halfway through that project right now. There's been 4 that have been created and about 4 more in the works. They are expensive projects, so that's why it's slow and steady, but we'll eventually get about 25 citywide that will be completed in neighborhoods. And I think when people see that, they really feel buy-in and excitement that improvements are coming to their neighborhood. Wildfire prevention is a program that we do every year. I send out information about it, and Century West Neighborhood Association does a Firewise Day. In the past, they've had Deschutes County come and talk about fire evacuation planning. They've had the Bend fire team come and talk about how to mitigate fire using, like, by cleaning up your lots. And so that's another initiative. Good Samaritan programs. That is Larkspur neighborhood is really good at the Good Samaritan program. Essentially, people can say, hey, I need help shoveling snow because I'm disabled, because I'm elderly, because I work 80 hours a week. And people can sign up also to help. So it's kind of like a matchmaking matchmaking process for snow removal. And then another one that's been big, and especially this year, is illegal fireworks. So you'll see lots of signs out there around the 4th of July saying no illegal fireworks, and some education efforts that the neighborhood associations really help the city spread the word about the risks of wildfire danger. So how does it work together with the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance? The Neighborhood Leadership Alliance, what was happening before it existed was that there was 13 neighborhoods. They were all telling council the problems that were going on in their neighborhoods, and it got to be chaotic. So there needed to be a way to distill down information and figure out whether a problem was a citywide issue or if it was regional, just like the west side is dealing with this, just the east side. And so the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance really helps with that. I'll show you a flow chart here of how it all works together, because I think this is a really good visual of the conduit that we talk about all the time. So on the far left side of the screen, you can see those are all the 13 neighborhood associations. Those neighborhood associations can then provide information to the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. So that means that at each Neighborhood Leadership Alliance meeting, we have a section in the agenda called Representative Reports. and each NLA rep can bring a conversation to the NLA's table and say, hey, Boyd Acres is really dealing with a lot of short-term rentals. And other people around the table can then hear that. And if they think that their neighborhood's also having some issues with that, then we can talk about it collectively as a group and decide whether or not we need to take it up to council. There's several methods for us to share information with council. One of them is quarterly check-ins. So all of the advisory committees in Bend, there's about 15 of them right now. We all have different lenses that we're looking at policy through. So when council's talking about a new House bill, like House Bill 2001, and the NLA looks at the policy, we're going to be looking for those livability and quality of life issues that might arise with the implementation of that bill. On the other hand, if Affordable Housing Advisory Committee looks at it, they're going to be looking at it from an affordability perspective and how easily it'll be implemented for developers and property owners if it were to pass. So if that makes sense, we all kind of provide input on different aspects of the policy, and sometimes those conflict. And so council and planning commission work together to decipher and figure out where they want to go with those after receiving our feedback. So you can see the importance is to really bring the issues to the NLA so that we can share those with council when we have quarterly check-ins. Alternatively, I'm your staff liaison. I'm watching these policy things. We hope that people who are on the NLA are sharing with their boards when they go back about what we're talking about and what some of the issues might be that are coming through the pipeline, so that there's that two-way conversation. There's a lot of methods to interact with council, the quarterly check-in being one of them. Another is work sessions. So a work session happens before the planning commission or the city council. And that is a time when everybody gets to sit and learn about some amendments that are being proposed or a new program that's being proposed. And as you listen to that, you can provide feedback. I think that the neighborhoods probably would feel concerned about this. I think that the neighborhoods would really appreciate your looking at this. So there's ways to interact with them, and that's usually one rep that sits in on those work sessions, and we alternate when we need to. So that works the same for city council and planning commission. And then of course, there's always your hearings that you can attend and provide public comment. The NLA together crafts letters to city council with a position that the committee votes on. And then we often see neighborhood associations put in their own letters additionally, which is always great. So I talked a little bit about the land use aspect of neighborhood associations. It's probably arguably one of the most important roles that the neighborhood association has. We see people getting frustrated by developments that are happening in their backyard. And at that point, it's too late. So we've tried to create a method that people can learn about projects well before they break ground, that they can provide their input back, that they can talk to the developers. And so there's a lot of opportunities for that. And one of the things that the last biennium, the NLA worked on, so the last 2 years, the NLA has been working on education for community members, just on the basic facts of land use and what the process is and where the opportunities are for community members to get involved while decisions are being made. And so one of their huge passion projects was a new land use education page. And I'm going to stop my slide so that I can show this to you. Are you able to see my desktop or my, sorry, my browser?
A stained glass window effect.
Okay, I need to do a new share. That was exactly right, Kathy. It is the stained glass window effect. learn about land use. So this is the new page that the NLA really worked on. And they did this with the help of all of the neighborhood associations, land use chairs. They reached out to the community for input. And so they've created a video that you can watch that talks about land use in Oregon. But then there's several different areas where you can dive in to different subjects, like well, everything from the comprehensive plan to the land use applications that you'll see in your neighborhood happening quite often. So that was an exciting project that we've just figured it out. Let's see, Jill. I see a chat. Sorry, I didn't see this earlier. I'd be curious about where BANA ranks in terms of activity and talking to the city government compared to the input of other NAs. Neighbors expressing discouragement regarding not receiving responses from either the city or city council, therefore they have given up. Yes, I think that those are valid points. I mean, BANA, Kathy is a part of the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. We always get reports from BANA. I also talk to BANA neighbors, so I feel like they're being represented, and our staff has also talked to, I know, especially North Point with Juniper Ridge happening right now. So as far as like activity and talking to the city government, I mean, I think that they're doing everything that the other neighborhood associations are doing too. So as far as the neighbors expressing discouragement about not receiving responses, I want to be kind when I say this, but we receive so much input from community members that's one of the reasons the neighborhood associations were created. We can't respond to every message. We can't respond to, well, yeah, every email. It would be unrealistic to assume so. So I can tell you that our council is very, very good at listening. We've been talking about this lately too, about how to, put it out there that we hear you. We're seeing the inputs come in. We're weighing the options. We're listening to our constituents and trying to make decisions based on that. But to expect a response from for everyone to expect a response, I think would be a little unrealistic. I just don't know that we can manage that kind of output. But it is so important to know what your community members are saying. And that's why with BANA, like in all neighborhoods, I think it's really important to try to do surveys of your membership, try to have those in-person meetings, get polls on hot topics. And they don't have to be in-depth, statistically valid surveys. They can be very short 2-question surveys like, how would you feel about a managed camp going in at Juniper Ridge? That I think that would be a really good one to hear how most of BANA feels about that. But again, everybody does it differently as far as how they measure their members. So I wanted to share with you the tools, and this is really the meat of what is going to help you as a board. The neighborhood associations do have a web page. So this is accessible by going to bendoregon.gov/neighborhoods. It's also, if you don't want to remember the URL, you can click on community, and then neighborhood associations is right on the top. So this page is your general page. It's mostly for community members who don't know what part of neighborhood association that they are in. And then it also allows the developers to provide land use contacts. So with each neighborhood association, one of the codes says that we have to have a land use chair or representative that we can send land use development notices to. So Kathy's been putting those out on your Facebook, and I think that that's been really great to see, because it is getting the word out there. There was a big effort to get those electronic in the last year, and we've finally gotten them in our inboxes. So that's exciting for once, because it used to be that you had to go to a mailbox and actually get it and then scan it and figure out a way to get it to your members. So hopefully that's cutting down some of the overhead. The reason I point out this page really for the boards is because on it, there is a section called Neighborhood Association Board Operations. And when you go to the board operations page, you'll have a whole lot of information about how to run a neighborhood association. On here, we have a handbook. The handbook goes through and briefly shares a little bit about each part of running a neighborhood association. Here's the table of contents, so I don't have to run through it, but everything from forming, establishing boundaries, creating bylaws, your meeting requirements, how to run effective meetings. So there's a lot of valuable information in this handbook that I think is helpful, especially for new board members. This information is also on the board member toolkit page. So if you scroll down, you're going to see past trainings that we've done. You're going to see forms and documents that you'll need to help you with your neighborhood. So a reimbursement form is one of the most commonly used forms by neighborhood associations. We have sample surveys, event checklists, and then the real meat of this page is your communications tools. So the mailings that we have, there's about 10 tabs here that all have different subjects. So if you want to learn more about mailings, you can click on mailings. And right now we have a quick tool so that you can get your own mailing list. So if you're going to do a postcard, that's where you're going to want to go. But it also gives you some tips on what to do if you're looking at a mailing. Websites and blogs we have information on. So how basically best practices are all in this website. And it's going to allow you to see what other people are doing, see what we recommend as a communications professionals, and really just some tools to get the work done. Let's see. And then the last piece that I wanted to talk with you about was the budgets for neighborhood associations. And this is something that we have been doing since the recession, where we provide a sum of money. In the past, it was about half of what it is right now. But the NLA stepped in last year and said, hey, we need more money to engage our members. Mailings are really expensive. Communications are really expensive. So can we use funding to do that? Or can we get more funding to do that? And so with the grant funding, council did approve that. And now all 13 neighborhoods collectively get about $100,000 each year to spend on communications for their neighborhoods. So there's things that are communications and operations based that money can go towards. We're working on assessing how we could change that in the next couple of years, because it does have some limitations. So for example, we've had neighborhood associations ask us if they can do a Arbor Day celebration and use the funds to purchase trees that they could plant with their neighbors. Unfortunately, that's not communications or operations, so we've had to say no. But I see the value in community building, and I think that opportunities like that are really going to bring people together. And so we're trying to figure out ways that we could maybe take some of those regulations off of the funding. So with BANA this year, I'll expand this. If you're a treasurer, this is the page that you want to go to, because it's going to have all the most recent info. We are currently in fiscal year 2022. So the fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. And so with this, and I'll select Boyd Acres so that you can see your own. It's gonna give you a real-time total, and this is new as of just a few weeks ago. We actually have it in real time. It used to be that you had to request a budget update from me, and it would take me about a week to get all of the numbers and figures because it's not friendly in our system. And it can get those back to you. Now it's updated every Monday night, so you can see what we have on our books and what your current available budget is every Monday. So unless we don't have a receipt from you that you still have in your pocket, it's going to be on this page. And we have some historical data too that you can tap into if you're curious about what you've done in the past as far as spending goes. So I think that's the bulk of this, presentation. I think that really the handbook is going to be a good tool for you all. I'm always happy to help if you have questions. Mailings are really, really difficult. And I say that because Councilor Campbell alluded to it earlier. There's not a clean way to reach renters. We've tried, and our data is based on Deschutes County tax assessor data, which means property owners are put in there. So there's a property owner list, and then there's a site address list is what we call it. And that has more units than the property address one would. But it's based on permit information that the city has. So it could be a permitted garage that you're sending a piece of mail to, and that's not going to be helpful for anyone. So there's a lot of return mail when you use those site addresses. So what we've done recently, and what we actually did just this June, was did a collaborative mailing between all of the neighborhood associations, where we sent out a brochure to about 60,000 addresses within the city of Bend, including PO boxes. And with that, when we do that group effort, we purchase a list from a mailing address, and it gives you, from a mailing house, and it gives you the point in time, everyone who's registered with USPS. And so we take that list, and then our city staff GIS team, and don't ask me what that stands for, but it's the Mapping and Interactive Tools Group. They do amazing things, and they take it and they overlay the neighborhoods map so that we're able to divide it by neighborhood association. And then I had sent that out to all the neighborhoods. So that is the best list at this time for you to use if you're hoping to include property owners and renters, as well as businesses, because we didn't exclude those from there either. So yeah, if you do use this neighborhood association page and you go to mailings and you go to our generated lists, they're not perfect. And we haven't quite figured out how to make them perfect yet, but we're working on it, and any feedback that you guys can provide us with will help us adjust them to be better. And I think one of the things Councilor Campbell is working on in this next 2 years also is getting our data to not reflect the Deschutes County Assessor's Office, but rather a real rent count, door to door. How do we look at our community without just looking at the property information property owner information that we have? So hopefully we will be able to improve that system in the future. And then, I don't know, I think one of the things that this group should be aware of is that council goals have several aspects that are impacting the neighborhood association. So let me share this graphic really quick. So at the beginning of every biennium, which is every 2 years, the council goes through a goal setting process where neighborhoods, community members, community groups all come forward and say, we think you should work on this for the next year, 2 years. We also pair that with a statistically valid survey where we hire a consulting company and they randomly call people throughout the city. The design of that is so that we get those voices that aren't always heard or don't have the time to go take an online survey. It's a more true sample of our community, and so that we can set our goals based on that in alignment with all of the other inputs that we have. And so this year, one of the big things that the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance is going to be working on is this assess the neighborhood association system goal. Councilor Campbell talked about this a little bit and about the inequities that we've seen just in how neighborhoods have grown. Inequities also being not just the color of your skin, but how many people are doing so much work. We went over this at the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance yesterday, and when 5 people are doing the work of when one person's doing the work of 5 people, are we really being representative of our membership, and how can we improve that? And that's collectively, that's citywide. We're all doing things in different ways. If you compare the neighborhoods right now, it's apples to oranges. Some have meetings every month, some have one every quarter. Some have 4 board members and some have 9. They're just operating so differently that it's really hard to compare. And so with this assessment, the plan is to go out into the neighborhoods, start understanding more. How are you using your money? How are you communicating with your neighbors? So that we can find maybe some gaps that we could probably help support and fill. So that's what's going to be really on the docket for the next 2 years. So you'll probably see me a few times at least. And we're going to have some really good conversations about how we can grow the neighborhood association system with the city, because we know that there's no stopping that train. All right, so that is my spiel. I'm happy to answer questions. I know it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. So if you think of things later, you're welcome to contact me too. This is the contact information for me, and then the neighborhoods and the NLA webpage on the city's website. Yeah, Steve.
Thank you for your explanation on many things here. It's been very interesting. The last graph you had up, few things kind of get to me: the environmental and climate, shared prosperity. What are they meaning by climate, environment,
Yeah,
prosperity?
so I think that that's a good question, and it really gets broken down. I should send you the document because I think you'll see, I think we have over 100 goals for the next 2 years, and these are the main sections that they are broken up into. And so that actual council goals worksheet will tell you what exactly their goals and the strategies to reach those goals are over the next 2 years. I'll pull it up here too and see if I can.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, one of the reasons that the Bend tree code is on that slide that I was showing you is because the neighborhood association said with all of the development, we're seeing clear cutting happening with some of these new developments, and we want to save our significant trees. And so the council heard that, and they said that they agreed and that we could relook at that. And so that is on that's one of the environmental goals for the next.
Well, that's kind of interesting because where I live is a modular home park community, and they're expanding here. And I've heard about 12 different ideas of what native trees and shrubs and all are. And I'm yes, I'm new to Bend, and I've never enjoyed seeing anything clear cutted, or forests way back when, and it's affected everything. But I guess I need to learn what our native trees and plants for Central Oregon are. A lot of people hate the juniper trees. Some people love them. I know there was one out back of my unit that was an absolutely beautiful tree, and it's gone. But that's also called expansion, and there's good and bad things with all of it. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's exciting for people like me that are nerds and enjoy policy. But I like to look at the next 2 years of council goals and see what is important to me as a community member And how do I want to be involved in that? So with the Environment and Climate Committee, they're going to start talking about the tree code. And part of that conversation is going to be what are significant trees and shrubs that we want to save, right? So those are the kind of conversations that'll happen. And this document kind of gives you the timeline on how to do that. I also forgot that the Environment and Climate Committee was recently started last biennium. So they have this new packet of goals and strategies that they're trying to fulfill, and council actually adopted a community climate action plan. So a lot of the environment and climate stuff comes out of that project or that group. So yes, I will send this to you, and you can get in as deep as you want and send me questions if you have them.
Chat, Makayla, that you might want to pick up.
Okay. What are the most helpful things that we can each do? Yeah. That's a really good question. I think that for boards, it's really important to have one person in charge of one thing. I've seen that be successful with most, and with, you know, Kathy being chair, but also an LA rep, that's a lot, especially if you know how much that the NLA is going to be asking of our reps over the next year or two. So having one person dedicated to those roles, but I think also succession planning, and I thinking ahead, right? So with most neighborhood associations, there's turnover. That's natural. We see it a lot. People move out of the area. People decide that they don't have the capacity to volunteer anymore. Some come in with an idea or I don't want to say agenda, that sounds negative, but they have a passion project that they want to work on. And once it's completed, they feel like they don't need to stay around anymore. But when those people leave, all of the information that they've had leaves with them in their own email addresses. And so having a plan for, like, say, Jim coming in and sharing with you what he did and what his processes were is really helpful. So if he's willing to do that, I think it's really beneficial just to know, because then you don't have to relearn or reinvent the wheel all on your own. And even better, if you can write it down and have it in a ban of policies and procedures, like that would be incredible. Policies and procedures can be different than bylaws. You don't have to change your entire bylaw setup unless it says that you have to. In order to enact some processes that you think help you the most. So one of the things that Kathy has done that's made it, that has helped with that succession planning, is made a Boyd Acres neighborhood in LA account. So if she finishes her term and someone else steps into that position, they can just take her login and password, and they have all of the history that she's had for the last term that she's been on. So those are just like tips and tricks. You define your roles and descriptions. The city really doesn't, because you are independent of us. We don't want to tell you what to do. And that's part of the beauty of neighborhoods, is that community members should feel safe and have trust in coming to you and sharing problems. And I think when the city has a hand in what neighborhood associations are doing, it makes it a little bit more difficult. And so, but that's also why we have so many neighborhoods that are operating so differently, right? I think that the assessment that we're doing in the next 2 years is going to shed a lot of light on what we could all be doing and best practices that we can be following to make it a little bit more standardized and streamlined.
Okay. Yeah. I know Kathy may want to kind of come in here too, but I know before we had another rep who was on the NLA, and sometimes it seemed like the NLA was taking on a life of their own as far as bringing things. And it looked like the purpose of that was to bring things from each of the 13, home, neighborhoods and bring it up. But some of the things that came out, and I know Kathy reported back, seemed like that there were some agenda things that folks there were making up and bringing forward. And then, so if it starts there and then goes forward, you've kind of, and I know Kathy did a great job reporting back, but that sends things in two directions. Do you know what if things are generated at the NLA and are going towards the council some way, it
Yeah.
also then has to come back to the neighborhood associations. You know what I'm getting at? It kind of like, it seemed like some of the things that were being reported back were generated from them. Does that, so,
Oh, so like some reps were sharing things, problems in their neighborhood that maybe weren't real problems.
well, not so much that, but it was that group then seemed to say, oh yeah, this is the thing. And it, I'm not sure it was coming from an individual. So maybe an individual rather than the association and things, but it seemed if things are generated in the middle, do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? There's a group that's in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
then that information has to go two ways. If you know what I mean, it's got,
Yeah.
it goes back to the neighborhoods and then up. So, you know, I just think it would behoove them to say, okay, what are we here for? What's going on in all these different neighborhoods, and find a way. I know it's tough, but to find a way to maybe report back to, I know they do through the, Kathy does and stuff, but I'm wondering how much of that
Is
gets
dictated by-
disseminated because we don't have that many people, you know, kind of come on some of these meetings. I know Kathy and others do a great job, but if there's 3 or 4 people,
Mhm.
you know, and does the NLA report in general and have a website and all that like the associations do?
Yeah, so we have a web page for the NLA, and that has all of our agendas and meeting. I'm working on getting the videos on there, as well as minutes and such. I think one thing that I would note, because yes, people are human. I think that, you know, there might be conversations that spiral that, you know, that don't need to. One thing that the NLA does have in place is that when people bring up issues and the committee thinks that it is a citywide issue, we vote on whether to find more information or not. And so an example of this would be the Dark Skies Initiative. We had some folks coming to the city that said, our streetlights are too bright. They're violating our dark skies community laws, and we want that changed. The NLA heard that, and a couple of them said, yeah, we agree. I think that's a problem with us too. Let's learn more about it. And so once they give me that direction as their staff person, I go and I collect all the information that I can on that topic. So I present it usually in the form of a memo. And you might have seen it in the form of questionnaire. So managed camps was one of those that I had Kathy bring back to you, like several questions about how do you feel about managed camps? What would make you feel comfortable with them in your neighborhood? And so we take all of this information after we hear that there might be some sort of disconnect or issue. And then we see what that information says, that data says, and then the committee decides whether to take action or not. I think what is different about the committee that no other committee has is that you have this neighborhood association that recommends you to be their representative. And so what I have said and what we encouraged all the neighborhoods to do as we were setting up the NLA was to put a section on your agenda at your neighborhood association board where your NLA rep can report back on what she said, what they said, what the NLA conversation was, and that you can share with them maybe some concerns that you have so that they could bring it to the next meeting. So that was kind of the method, but because you're independent, we can't dictate that. It has to be in your bylaws or processes. The city can't say like, no, you're not really being representative or you're not communicating well enough. I definitely can talk to people about it and say, you know, I've heard concerns, but there isn't really a method to make it a requirement, if you will.
Just, you know, I would say if somebody brought the thing about dark skies, when we did the thing about the safety projects and things, we had people coming up and saying we needed streetlights because
Yeah.
our neighborhood was so dark with intersections and things. So they would seem to be somewhat in conflict, you know.
Yeah, totally.
it's-
That
I'm just
actually is
saying, you
what.
know, so-
Yeah, and I realized, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, that I didn't tell you what the end result was. With that one in particular, we found that the Dark Skies group actually worked with street staff to pick the light bulbs that were going in. So they had done their due diligence, and that if neighbors had specific issues, they could call our streets department and request a shield so that the deflection of the light wasn't on their property. So that was, we decided, oh, it's a non-issue, we're not going to move it forward. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, because we did get that feedback as well of like, no, we need more lights because it's not safe. So,
Yeah. No. Okay. Thanks.
yeah.
I'd just like to add in that the transition between, I mean, Matt took on the NLA as the first rep, and I don't think he had all this training. And then he had to leave suddenly, and I jumped in, and it was like paddling as fast as I could to try to keep up with things, topics that the NLA was already 3/4 of the way along with, and bringing things back to the NA and having to make sense out of it to the NA. And so it was challenging at first. I think I'm getting a little bit better at it, but anyway, it has to do with that succession, and it has to do with not everything that the NLA is going to deal with is a big issue for Bona, and not everything that's a big issue for Bona is going to be adopted by the NLA and taken forward.
Right. And that's why you still have your voice as a neighborhood association to reach out to the council on your own too. That's
So
great.
we're a little bit past 7. We
Oh,
do have
sorry.
more time reserved with Zoom, but I sort of sense that we're coming to an end here.
Yeah.
Anybody have any more questions? I'd sure like to thank Makayla for doing all this and helping us understand the environment, the operations environment that we are embedded in. And I think we'll be more effective for knowing more about what that is. You know, communications both to the city council, to the NLA, and to our the members of our NA, I think should improve because of this training.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and it took me, I mean, I've been there for 2 years now as of last week, and it's taken me 2 years to understand how it all works together. So definitely don't shy away about asking questions, because it does, it's a lot. It's a strange relationship, a unique one for sure. So thanks for having me, you all.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll share a copy of the recording with you, Makayla.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Thanks,
I'll give you the
everybody,
host
for
roll
on.
back. Okay. Wait, first in the chat is the council goals. And here is your host back, Kathy.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, thanks everybody for attending, and I'll be in touch with the board members about when we want to have elections or assign duties, and then October 20th is our meeting with Shelley Witt. So we look forward to having people join us at that time. Thanks.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good
Take
night.
care.